The last light of evening bled through the trees as Eleanor Whitcomb stepped off the narrow path and into the hush of the woods. At 60, she felt as if her life had already been packed away with the furniture she had sold that morning. The house where she had played piano for decades now belonged to strangers, and all she carried was a small lantern and the weight of years that had slipped past unfulfilled. The forest seemed to breathe with her. Each footstep pressed into damp earth as if she were walking across a sleeping creature's back. Somewhere above, a branch creaked. She paused, listening to the stillness that followed. The air itself felt watchful. Instead of fear, a calm she could not explain filled her chest, as if the darkness were welcoming her home. Mist drifted between the trunks like pale smoke, and from it emerged a figure so unexpected that she nearly dropped the lantern. A massive silverback gorilla stepped forward, silent and certain, his dark eyes catching the faint glow of her light. They held no threat, no wild menace, only a deep, intelligent curiosity that reached her before she could move. Eleanor lifted the lantern slightly, expecting him to retreat. He did not. He lowered himself onto the moss, mirroring her stillness as if they had rehearsed this meeting across lifetimes. She felt her breath leave her in a soft exhale, and in that shared silence something unnamed passed between them, a recognition of loneliness, of longing. Rain began to whisper through the canopy. A heavier drop struck her cheek, then another. The gorilla shifted, reaching for a thick branch fallen beside him. With slow care, he held it above her like an umbrella, shielding her from the sudden shower. The gesture was so deliberate, so gently offered, that it felt like a vow. When the rain eased and the mist swallowed his broad shoulders once more, Eleanor found herself trembling, not with fear, but with a warmth she hadn't known in decades. The woods closed around her again, but the night had changed. Somewhere beyond the trees, possibility waited. Eleanor returned to the forest the next day, and the day after that, unable to name the force that drew her back. Each meeting unfolded without words. She brought fruit and set it on the moss between them. He accepted with a slow nod, his dark eyes steady on hers. Sometimes they sat for hours as the wind combed through the canopy, copying each other's smallest movements, the tilt of a head, the stretch of a hand, until their silences felt like conversation. She began to call him Ash, for the soft gray sheen of his coat and the quiet strength that reminded her of old embers still alive beneath the hearth. One morning, the crack of distant gunfire shattered their calm. Before she could flinch, Ash wrapped an arm around her and pulled her behind a fallen log. The thunder of her own heartbeat filled her ears as his massive body formed a living wall. In that instant she understood what his stillness meant. He guarded her as fiercely as she would guard him. Whispers followed her back to town. Neighbors noticed her twilight returns and the baskets of fruit she carried into the woods. Some muttered of madness, others of danger. A game warden knocked on her door, warning that a great ape had been sighted and promising to track it down. Eleanor met his gaze without blinking and told him there was nothing to find. She would not betray the sanctuary that had become her heart's refuge. Then came the night the storm broke. Lightning split the sky as rain turned the paths into torrents. The hillside shuddered, a low roar rising beneath the thunder. Ash appeared through the deluge, seized her hand, and lifted her onto his back as the ground gave way behind them. They climbed toward higher ground while the storm lit the forest in sudden white flashes, their shapes etched together like a single defiant sculpture against the fury of the heavens. When the tempest finally passed, they stood among dripping leaves and steaming earth. Eleanor looked into his eyes and felt the weight of years dissolve. What bound them was not the romance people gossiped about, not any claim of possession, but a communion beyond the reach of language. In Ash's silent devotion she discovered a vitality she had thought lost forever, a youth born of trust and wonder. At dawn, as the mist lifted and birds began to sing, she rested her head against his broad shoulder. The forest hummed with new life around them. She was no longer a woman counting lost days, but a soul reborn, proof that love, in its most primal and enduring form, needs no words at all.